Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Cabinet Vision Guy. In today's episode we're going to continue our series on JavaScript and we're going to add a little bit more functionality to our JavaScript UCS and we're going to start to manage the connections. So we're going to add a connector in between the side filler and the end panel. And if we get enough time, what we'll do is we're going to wrap this into a function because we're going to start applying connectors to some of the different components as we introduce functionality for connection types over the next few episodes. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually starting out from the welcome screen today, and the first thing I'm going to do just to make it easy for myself is I'm going to go out and just pick one of the connections to work with, and I'm going to pick my graphics connector and I'm just going to make a note of the name and I'm going to copy this into a note and I'm just going to make a note of the ID. So we've got the connector name on the right hand side and then the ID, which is 75 for this one. And if I just head into my notes, I'm just going to include that. I need that in a second, and it's going to make life a little bit easier, like I said. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close down out of this, and I'm going to head into my job, and then we can start writing our UCS. So with my side filler job now open, I'm going to head into UCS's. And if I head up to the top, you'll see we've got our episode 6. Again, that's just a copy of episode 5 at the moment, and I've not made any modifications to the code. And the bulk of the work that we're going to do today is actually going to be in a separate UCS altogether. So when I'm compiling a UCS like this that ends up with lots of functionality in, where I just want to play with a little bit of code and do some editing, I'll often do that in a separate UCS altogether. So what I want to do is I want to create myself an example UCS just to have a little bit of a play and experiment with adding a connector to a part. And I'm going to choose to add a connector. I'm going to choose our graphics connector. I'm going to add it to a top, I think, and just set one of the connections, I think, on one of the widths, just to grab me some example code. So I'm not interested in what we're going to call this UCS. I'm going to delete it once I finish with it anyway. But what I'm going to do is just set the connection, and I'm going to select our graphics connection. And I'm going to link it to a part, and I'm going to link it to a top. But I'm going to add that bit in afterwards as well. And I'm going to come along down here, and for this I'm going to select that I want to apply this to one of the widths. And I'm just going to apply it to one edge, again just to grab me some example code. And I'm just going to specify that I want to apply this to a part and I want to add it to a top. So if I take a look at the code that I've generated, I'll see that I've got a fairly standard cabinet vision object with the graphics connector. So I'm doing a this.createChild and I need to change this to object connection. All the different objects for the JavaScript integration can be found in the help file as well if you're not too sure what to use. But for this, what we're doing is we're creating a connection object, then we're passing it a name and a description, and then what we're doing in our code is we're setting a parameter for the edge work plane, then we're setting a parameter for obviously the dx, dy to make sure it's positioned correctly, I think on the part. And then if we come down here, we've also got the connection ID that we're using. And at the moment, what I'm going to do with that is I'm just going to take this away and use our connection ID of 75. And I'm going to save my changes to this, and with it enabled, and have a look at my assembly. And as you can see on my assembly, I've now got on my top just a graphics connection applied to the left edge. If I head into here and just show you what this looks like in the object tree on the top, you'll see that we've got our graphics connection, and in here we're specifying an edge work plane, so that is the edge of the component that we're working on. So for this it's number 1. If we wanted the one on the other side, it'd be number 3, and I think this is number 2 and number 4. So now I've got some example code to add myself a connection. What I'd like to do with that is just head back into my UCS, and I'm going to take a look at my code. Now when we're creating a cabinet vision object, there's a couple of different ways we can set the properties of that object. We can either use set parameter like we've got here, or we can just access the standard properties, so the dx, dy and dz just to set the values. Some of the parameters we do have to use set parameter for, so things like edge work plane I'm going to leave as is, but the others I'm just going to quickly run through and just set the properties manually. And what I'd like to do for my connection ID, rather than having to pass the number and remember the number, what I'd like to use is the connection name. And to do that, what I need to do is I need to query the ID. So if I just head over to the help file, and obviously I've had a look for JavaScript, and I'm in the JavaScript object model here, and we can see that we've got the option to query the ID and return the name of something, or the number, or the ID number, should I say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this as an example and I'm going to copy this. And what I need to do is just remember that I've got ID underscore connection, and that's the thing that I'm actually going to be passing. So if I come back in here, and if I go back to my help file and grab this one, what I need to do is just put that in there, remove this. And then what we can do with this one is actually just pass the name of the connection now. So if I come into my notes again, what I'm going to do is just use graphics connector. And this is going to make it easier for us when we actually build this into a function. We don't really ever want to be worrying about ID numbers of connectors and things like that. We want to be able to send a string ideally, and then we only have to remember the connection name. So what I'm going to do, when I've made my modification, I'm going to just go back down to assembly level, make sure I don't get any error messages with my UCS, and just visually check my connection. And we can see that this is in here. It's the correct connection as well, so I've not made any mistakes there, which is always good. So once I'm happy with my example code, obviously my isolated UCS, what I'd then like to do is introduce this into my main UCS. So what I'm going to do is, without deleting my UCS, I'm just going to grab a copy of this, and I'm going to disable my UCS. And if I go back to my add side fillers episode 6, I'm just going to head into code. And what I think I'm going to do is go ahead and build this straight into a function. I think that would probably be easier. So I'm going to create myself a little bit of space up at the top and go ahead and create a function. Again, I'm typing with one hand, so I'll be a little bit slow. I apologize. The function I'm going to call create or add connection. I also can't spell, as many of you have realized by now. Add connection to part edge. There we go. And I'm going to open this up, and I want to pass a few different parameters to this. I'm going to just start by pasting, and I'm going to close this off for a second. I'm just going to paste this in here because no doubt I'll overwrite it on my clipboard. So what I want to do is just have a look through and look at the objects that I actually want to be passing to this function. So what I'd like to do is be able to pass the connection name to be able to specify different connections if I want to change the connector. So I'm going to put con name. And I'm not going to set a default value on this one. So and I'm going to use con description. I'll just call it desk, make it easier. And then I want the work plane as well. And I am going to set a default value on this one, I think. I'm going to set it to 1. And then I also want to pass the part itself. And I'm going to explain this one. So currently, when we're creating a connector, or if we went back to our example UCS, I'll do that just to make it easier. I'll save changes, would be good. If I come down to our example UCS here and look at the apply conditions, currently this UCS is being applied to a top. So in our code, when we reference this, we're referencing obviously the top. If we look at our side filler UCS and look at the apply conditions, this is actually referencing the cabinet. And the filler is something that we're introducing within that UCS. So what we need to do is probably enable our UCS, which I'll do at the end. But what we need to do is we need to be able to pass the part to our function to decide which part is actually going to get this connection for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to include part, and I'm going to include a default value for this, mainly because we'll be turning this into a library function in the later episodes. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to include a default value of this. Now, I understand that at the moment in this UCS is going to always return the cabinet, which wouldn't be correct. But if we were launching this function from somewhere else, it would be correct. So if we were doing a UCS for each top again and launch this function, it would be then correct. So I'm just going to open this and close it. And what I now want to do is some of the values or arguments that I'm going to be passing, I need to include in here, obviously. So I'm going to go with connection name to begin with. And I'm going to include that for the name. And I'm also going to include that down here for our connection ID as well. So I'm just passing the connection name when I'm calling this function. I'm then going to add the description and the work plane as well. And now what I want to do with part is if I grab this, you'll see how at the moment we've got this.createChild. So if I was to call this function now, what it would do is it would add the connection, instead of adding it to the filler, it would add it to the assembly. So what I'm going to do is change that to part.createChild, and then when we pass the part to this function, or pass it as an argument, what we're doing is we're going to be specifying that we want to obviously create this on the part that we're passing. The other thing that we need to change on this is the length of the connection as well. So what we need to do is we need to get the edge length of the edge work plane that we're working on. And to do that, we need to do part evaluate. And then I'm going to open brackets and I want edge. I'm going to be lazy again and copy from up here. Edge. And then I'm going to put edge work plane. And then I'm going to put dy. And what this is going to evaluate is it will do part.evaluate again because we're passing the filler part or the end panel part in a few episodes. It's going to do part.evaluate and then edge, and then the edge work plane that we want to apply this connector to, and then the dy of that edge. So that's edge, I think in this case is going to be 1, edge 1 dy for the length. So what I want to do next is I want to call this function further down my UCS. So I'm just going to indent these in. And I'm going to grab this section up at the top here, save me remembering anything. And I'm going to come down to where I'm doing my filler. And I'm just going to paste this in. So what I'm going to do is add connection to part edge. The part that I'm going to be passing is the filler itself. So I'm going to fill this in backwards. The edge work plane that I'm working on, I'm going to start off by just selecting edge work plane number 1. The connection description, I'm probably just going to use the connection name. So I'm going to go back to this and just copy this one in. And then I'm going to pass this as well for the connector itself. So what I'm hoping is going to happen in a second is when I return out of this, I'm hopefully going to see some connections that have been applied to my filler. They're going to be applied to edge work plane number 1. I'm not sure if that's correct, whether it should be number 1 or number 3, but we'll see in a second. And what I'm doing when I call this function, it's calling this block of code up here, obviously. And if I just make one last check to make sure I think everything's okay. And it would help it if I had the UCS enabled. Let's just go back. There we go. And just enable that one. There we go. So if I just check through now, what we've got is our filler on our left hand side. And if I expand this, we'll see we've got a graphics connector. And it's actually been applied to the bottom edge at the moment, so I did get it completely wrong. It wants to be edge number 2 or edge number 4. But I think that's been fired correctly. So what I'm going to do is head back into my UCS. And I'm going to quickly change. And again, all I have to do now is just head down here and change this from 1. And I'm going to try 4 first. Probably going to be number 2, just to keep me on my toes. There we go. So if I change that to number 2. There we go, and you'll see that we've now got a connection that's fired between our filler and our end panel. Now what I want to do with this is obviously I want to replicate exactly what I've done here on the right hand side. So now I've got this as a function, it should be nice and simple for us. So if I go back to my UCS, into code, and I'm going to come down here to where I'm adding the connection to part edge, I'm going to grab this one. Now what I would probably do in this is just differentiate between the different fillers. So I've got these called fillers and the filler object is being created. What I'll probably do is, just before the next episode, probably rename those to left filler and right filler. But I'm just going to add these in as well. And for this one, instead of 2, I'm going to put this as number 4. And then if I return out, we should see that we've now got connections on either side. So that's how we go about managing some of the connections. What we're going to do in the next episode is we're going to put another control into the assembly level, and this will let us decide which connections we're applying, so we can support a few different types, maybe a different screw connection or a peanut connector as well. So hopefully you found this episode useful. Feel free to give us a like, share and subscribe. We'll also have the example UCS that we're creating shared on the Nexus community as well. We're also on Facebook, that's facebook.com/thecabinetvisionguy, and Instagram.com as well, that's instagram.com/thecabinetvisionguy. Cheers!